Greetings. This is the Native Business Podcast, and we are at episode 6. My name is Gary Davis.
And my name is Carmen Davis.
And again, this is the Native Business Podcast, and we welcome you back to another great episode, the voice of business in Indian country, Native business.
And this episode was actually recorded live at the Native Business Summit, which was held May 13th through the 15th at the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Presenting sponsor, Cherokee Nation Businesses. We want to thank you to the 300 plus folks that came out and joined us there. And this is a topic that definitely touches on entrepreneurship.
Yes.
It was discussed there. And I guess maybe we should elaborate a little bit. What we did at the Native Business Summit is we held many different things, a trade show. We had a ton of networking. We had amazing keynote speakers, 24 total breakout sessions. And then 6 of those breakouts we recorded as the first episodes of the Native Business Podcast.
Correct.
From the Native Business Podcast stage with a special guest host.
Mika Leonard. She did amazing. From
the Miami tribe of Oklahoma. And we've run, 2 of them so far.
Yes.
This will be the 3rd that we're getting ready to go to. Recorded live at the Native Business Summit. This one's really exciting because some of these folks are kind of like entrepreneurial restaurateur rock stars in Indian country.
This one is Native Cuisine and Brewers. Brewers, sorry.
Brewers. Sorry, Jake Keys and all those other brewers out there. Brewers.
I got to work on that. Anyway, what's really popular right now is the farm to table
movement.
Yes, and that's
where
a Native
you
concept.
Take all the good stuff right from the farm, maybe within just a few hours of being harvested, and maybe days, and it's on your table.
Yes, absolutely.
Fresh as fresh can be.
Yes. So this one includes panelist Ben Jacobs, who's the owner of Tocabe.
Which is a very popular eatery in the great city of Denver, Colorado.
Yes. Bill McClure, he's the CEO of Native American Coffee.
Right. And
Jake Keys, co-founder and brewer.
Yes.
Skydance Brewing.
There in Oklahoma City.
Yes.
And Mr. McClure is also from the great state of Oklahoma. And actually, originally, Ben Jacobs is from Oklahoma.
Yeah, he's Osage.
From Oklahoma, too. So are there more folks on that or just those 3 gentlemen?
Just the 3 and then Mika as the host.
Special guest host.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, we will get right to it. No sense in delaying that any further. It's a great conversation. Very, very accomplished folks on that panel. We have to, of course, remind people to visit us at nativebusinessmag.com, sign up for the free print version of the Native Business Magazine, and also to join all of the great folks that are getting the weekly updates from all of the great content that happens there online at nativebusinessmag.com.
And also on all the socials, Instagram, Native Business Magazine.
Also Facebook, Native Business Magazine, Twitter, at Native Biz Mag.
Correct. And then the other one is YouTube.
50 subscribers right now. And of course, we're just starting that out, but we definitely want to see it get into the thousands.
For sure.
And when we do, you'll find it much easier to navigate to go right to youtube.com/native
So
business.
Please help us out.
Yes, please help us out. And with that, we definitely don't want to waste any more time. We want to get right to the great panel that, again, was recorded at the Native Business Summit with these great folks and with our guest host of the Native Business Podcast, Mika Leonard.
Yes.
So without any further ado, let's make that happen.
My name is Mika Leonard, host of the Native Business Podcast. This session is entitled Entrepreneurship, Native Cuisine and Brewers, Farm to Table, a Native Concept. Native food producers and brewers are prospering, increasing in numbers and in capacity across the United States. It's as if an entire indigenous food movement has taken off, and it shows no sign of slowing down. Join this panel to learn how some of the leading companies in the native food and beverage industry are innovating menu offerings, managing their brick and mortar and food truck growth, all while introducing the masses to indigenous culinary and brewing excellence. A delectable discussion. Please help me to welcome our panel. I have Mr. Ben Jacobs, the owner of Tocabe, an American Indian eatery, which is located in my residence of Denver, Colorado. So it's very exciting. I've eaten there several times, and you should all go check it out. Mr. Bill McClure, the Chief Executive Officer of Native American Coffee. And lastly, Mr. Jake Keys, co-founder and brewer, Skydance Brewing. So again, I'll ask that each of you quickly introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, how you got into the business, and tell us a little bit about your business. Bill, why don't we start with you?
I'm Bill McClure, Native American Coffee. We also have some other online stores. We're an online coffee company. We roast and package and ship across the country, from Boston to San Diego. We supply both businesses as well as direct to consumer. We roast specialty coffee. Today, the coffee industry has changed to what's called the third wave coffee, and the millennials are drinking better coffee and the quality, and we are, that's our game. And we buy from small farmers and bring it in and roast it and ship it.
Great. Jake, tell us about Skydance Brewing.
Yeah, so my name is Jacob Keys. I'm Ioway, Osage, and Otoe. Own Skydance Brewing Company. We're the first Native American-owned brewery in Oklahoma City. Currently, we operate out of a co-op brewery called the Brewers Union, and we're finalizing plans now to move into our own facility in the downtown Oklahoma City area. Obviously, craft beer, a lot of people know, has become kind of the new wave and all around the country. In Oklahoma, we're a little bit behind on that. Still 48th in the country in breweries, craft breweries per capita. So that's actually exciting for us because it shows that there's a lot of room for growth. So thanks for having us here.
Go ahead, Ben.
Cool. I'm Ben Jacobs. I am Osage as well. And I own Tocabe, American Indian Eatery based in Denver, Colorado. We have been in business for going on 11 years now. We have 2 brick and mortar restaurants and a food truck. And how we started was with a goal in mind of creating a space for native cuisine in the culinary landscape that was rapidly expanding, because we felt like there was a need for us to be able to share our food and our experiences as well as our identity and our community on a larger level outside of just in community settings, from community organizations, family gatherings, powwows. We wanted to create a space in the restaurant community. So that's how we got kind of our start, and I'm sure we'll end up talking more.
A question for all of you, and we heard a little bit from Vice President Leiser this morning and on some of our panels yesterday that starting your own business is a very, very difficult undertaking. The statistics will show most small businesses fail. I would say food and beverage can be some of the trickiest businesses to get into. There is a huge saturation in the market. I know each of you operate very different kinds of businesses, but can you talk a little bit about what made you want to get into this business, some difficulties that you would be willing to share with us, just like I said, getting into an industry that it just has a low statistic, generally speaking, of actually making it. So anybody feel free to jump in on that one.
Well, we kind of stumbled into our start because I was so young with my business partner Matt. We were 24 when we developed the concept, 25 when we opened. So we kind of went into it with this lack of business mentality. Actually, it was just really to create something that we were hoping was going to be something special, and again, provide a resource. The thing that was incredibly difficult for us, and still is, in a lot of native food producers or people in just native food in general, cooks, chefs. The biggest thing is that we're not a pizza place, we're not a burger place. We're something that to the masses is relatively unfamiliar. There are things that people relate to and understand once they're a part of coming in, foods that they understand, and then what we can do is then share that these are native-based foods. They have their origins in our communities, and so that's the biggest difficulty for us, at least, was getting people to come in and experience and be willing to share what we're trying to create. Because again, you have to be more kind of experimental-minded, because you're like, well, what is this? What am I doing? I have no idea what this is, and kind of approach a food and a cuisine. But again, in this day and age, it's really beneficial, especially as you know, living in Denver, there's every type of cuisine. You can go out and eat Korean one night, Ethiopian the next night, Italian, French, whatever it is. But we need those people to come out and really experience what we're trying to create and share. And it's taken time, but you see the people, once they come experience the food, you know, they understand it, they love it, they come back, they support not only you as a company, but you as a cause as well, which is really important.
Yeah, I think for us, it's actually pretty similar. You know, he operates a business that has a food menu that's pretty unique and different from everybody else around. And craft beer is a very similar deal. Craft beer is one of those things most people, maybe even at this conference, have never even had a craft beer.
Did you bring enough for the whole class?
Yeah, well, yeah. Unfortunately, we're in such high demand that I didn't have enough to just give away out here. So, but and then you asked kind of like why I wanted to get into that, but for me there was no other thing I'd rather do. I've been brewing beer since I was like 12 years old with my dad, so it's a passion. It was something working for my tribe for 10 years and in the gaming world, working for somebody else, I was suffocating and couldn't live that way anymore. And so I had to do something on my own, and had to be the one thing I love the most, which is making craft beer. So.
I'm Bill McClure, Muscogee Creek. We started 10 years ago in the online business with our daughter, Ellie, and developed a coffee brand called Miss Ellie's. We later bought a company down in Austin called All Day Gourmet and merged it with the coffee.org business. I think the main thing for us being an online was to acquire the right domain. We bought coffee.org was our first one, and then we own a number of others. Just last couple of years ago, we bought nativeamericancoffee.com out of California.
Well, I know, Bill, we had talked about just branding and the importance of your name. For all three of you, I think, somebody's going to come, especially I would think Tocabe, and say, what does that mean? Or Skydance Brewing, Skydance. Native American coffee is very straightforward. All of you have great names that are going to make people ask about them. So I imagine that it comes up pretty regularly, and I believe some of it's just through your own marketing as well, that you are tribally owned businesses or tribal individual owned businesses. What does that look like when you get to sort of share that story? What kind of questions do you get from customers? I think this is just a great opportunity to be able to share a little bit, and I'm just curious what that has looked like for any of you.
Yeah, for us, it's interesting. So craft beer is something that's mainly white male driven. So a lot of the people that are drinking our beer are new to the Native American culture. They see our branding and they can clearly see that we're Native owned. People say that as soon as they come in, or they see our logo, they say, they look at me, are you Native American? And so that gives me an opportunity to really talk about our tribe, talk about our indigenous people and our cultures. We use that, the look on our packaging. We have a beer called Fancy Dance, and a lot of people like, wow, what's Fancy Dance? Now it's an opportunity to talk to them about it and tell them what that is. And so there's also a negative side to it for us personally. Alcohol and the Native American culture is a sensitive subject. Tribes have been running and operating wineries out in California forever. And craft beers fits more into that wine culture than it does, the party, frat boy culture that you might think of as beer. So beer is always looked at more of like a blue collar type beverage. So I look at this opportunity as a way for me to change the way people think of Native Americans and alcohol. Craft beer is an art for us. It's about quality and not quantity. And this is actually one of my purposes for doing this, is to to change what, people have been telling that story of natives and alcohol. Those are non-natives that have been telling that story forever. Every culture, every race has issues with alcohol and drugs, and I knew how to appreciate craft beer as a kid with my dad making beer, and it was such an important cultural thing in our household that when I turned 21, I wasn't out partying and getting drunk and being an alcoholic, and it was such an artistic thing for us.
Yeah, and it's actually, there's a lot of similarities for us too. When we began to develop our concept and our brand, there was a lot of conversation that went into what was the image that we were going to portray and what's the image that we were going to share. And so there's always this very fine line of what we have to do from our perspective is that we have to stay very culturally driven, culturally focused, culturally aware, culturally appropriate, but at the same time we have to ride this balance of being a business as well. So to kind of continue the philosophy of what we're trying to create, we have to ride those two lines. So from our branding standpoint is we wanted something that would compete, something that from the business aspect was memorable, something that, so Tocabe, something that stuck in people's minds. We wanted it to hey, I'm gonna run down the street, I'm gonna go to Tocabe. We wanted something that was gonna stick. We wanted things that were gonna have meaningful, or meaning to us at least, and then create a conversation. So like our logo is 3 hands. We used the 3 hands to represent the 3 villages. We talked about we could do feathers, we could do moccasins, we could do all these different things, which we're in full support of and have a time and a place, but we wanted to do something that was specific to us and did create that conversation. So people would come in and say, hey, what's going on? What is this? What is that? Even from the interior of our restaurant, what I always say is we were never going to be gift shop. That was not the goal of what we were trying to do. We're not selling things on the walls. What we're doing is we're providing food. We're providing a space to share a meal. And so we wanted people to come in, the food to be the focus, but to have meaning that we felt could kind of meet a lot of communities, because Denver's a relocation city, so we have natives from all over. So we wanted to be able to provide a space that was comfortable for everyone, native and non-native alike. So from our decor standpoint, it was paints based off buckskins, drum leathers. We put our purple color on the ceiling to represent midnight sky. We have plexiglass, it's wind and clouds, and all these representations that we felt were important but forced a conversation. Because that's a lot about what we do. Again, we're not just a normal place that people just run in and it's food that they're familiar with. It's something that we want you to come in and eat and go if you'd like, but if you also want to come in and kind of question why we do what we do, then we can talk about that. And that's what's great about the people that work with us, and we're about 70-75% native staff, is that then guests come in and actively engage with our people, especially young people. Then they can tell them about what we do, but also about who they are, what tribal community they're from. So again, that's kind of, from our perspective, was we wanted to create conversation and dialogue about what we do in our branding, and then every bit of what we do has that meaning, from the colors to the name to like the logo and stuff like that.
And actually, for those of us that haven't had the chance to go to Tocabe, and for those listening, can you tell us a little bit about your menu? Just explain the restaurant, just so everybody here kind of understands.
Yeah, so we're a fast casual style restaurant, which means it's counter service. So you go to the counter. We're not table service. We don't have waiters, waitresses. So you walk up to the counter and you order. It's actually, what a lot of people don't know is that our restaurant is based off a restaurant that my parents started in 1989. When we moved to Denver, my mother got a job at the Denver Indian Center, and that's when we moved to Denver. Then my parents opened a restaurant called Gray Horse American Indian Eatery, which was the same style. You walked, you ordered at the counter and went down. It was in a food court. So we based our concept off of that. So we kind of say that that was our prototype. And it fits now, and a lot of people compare us to like Chipotle, Subways, those kinds of things, which makes sense. But it works for us, and the reason we want to stick was because that's what my parents did. But as well as if you say to someone talking about menu, you say braised bison, you say green chili stew, you say corn soup, you say hominy salsa, you say all these different things, butternut squash relish. People are like, well, what is that? And they're not familiar. So if they can actively see what the food is, the quality, what the ingredients are, and then engage with our crew, that's what's really important. So we do a range from, obviously Indian tacos, to we do something called a grilled bannock bread, which is with friends that we have up in Canada, kind of had got similarities between what we do in our bread and something that they do. So we cook that over open fire. When you order, we do wild rice bowls, we do quinoa and wheatberry based bowls, and then you have all your varieties of toppings. We do bison ribs, which is kind of our most popular, and then we have a variety of soups and specials that go throughout the year. So we also do, I just tell you because people always think it's crazy in fast casual restaurants, is that's why we do it, is we want to say that we can do other things and not fit the mold. Is like we do rabbit specials during the year, we do turkey specials during the year, like cook full turkeys that people have said you can't do that in that style concept. But that's the whole point, is we're going to force a change in the food and the approach and not do the mold of what you've been told in a fast casual quote-unquote restaurant.
Our brand has changed over the years. We started with coffee.org, as I mentioned, in Miss Ellie's. We registered as a minority-owned company. We're able to get some government contracts. We supply a number of casinos around the country. When we had the opportunity to buy Native American coffee, we jumped on that because that was a real opportunity for us to have a brand that described what we are. We're 70% native hire. We work at that, and that's been pretty difficult through the years to keep our people and our hiring people to understand that that's a real priority to me. So today we are just got HubZone approved, and we're expanding the government side of our business. We also supply a number of nations around the country, and the brand keeps going.
Well, and like we said, with a name like Native American brand, I don't know if you could have a better name. And I know that you were telling me this morning some of your coffee varietals have some really fun names too that I'm sure people sort of jump on. And I guess one other question for you, I know you've been in business for a long time and you've had several businesses, I guess many businesses before this, is that, with coffee, much like with craft beer, I think there's been this real resurgence in sort of the art form behind it. And you go to these, really fancy coffee shops where it's almost like getting a craft cocktail made, and you could spend 20 minutes waiting for, whatever the cool machines are that make coffee. I'm not even sure what they're called, and that people really go for the experience. But at the same time, coffee is still something that's, consumed at such a rapid rate. Like Bill, you mentioned, obviously, everybody in offices is drinking coffee, K-cups. That was a huge boom that happened, and just how you've had to adapt as a business to be able to meet sort of those varying needs. As you mentioned, you supply to a lot of smaller offices, a couple larger corporations, and of course to some tribal casinos and hotels. Can you talk me through a little bit of what it's been like just on the business side, sort of making sure you're meeting the demands of the industry? In
2008, the K-Cups were just really getting started, and we were one of the first online companies to sell K-Cups, and our business grew very rapidly in that segment. Then Green Mountain bought our suppliers and kicked us out, and we lost 95% of our business in 1 week. And that was pretty devastating to us. We were able to reinvent ourselves, and that's when we really started selling to the Indian nations and to the consumer and just regular coffee. We got into coffee roasting at that time. Today we have all different kinds of coffee, but 13 different countries we bring in sustainable coffee from. My favorite is Dancing Rabbit, and that's one of our Guatemalan, Costa Rican, and Colombian blends. But we have some great coffees.
I guess we'll pivot over to Jake. Sort of similar question. I know for you, as you mentioned, Oklahoma is really seeing and experiencing the craft beer movement. Ben, I'm sure Denver. It's been there for a long time, and I think sometimes the word craft beer has actually become diluted because we're seeing so many large beer producers calling themselves craft brewers, and I'm not sure at what point, once you sort of move out of the craft beer cycle, if you will. But as you mentioned, in Oklahoma, you actually have a tremendous opportunity because a lot of people don't know what it is. Can you talk us through a little bit of what, how that might be also a challenge? If you think about somebody who's been drinking more of your standard Pilsner, Miller Lite, Coors Light, Bud Light, and then all of a sudden you give them this beer in a fancy glass that looks like coffee and it's got a really, really high proof, and they're not used to that palate. How do you kind of get people to engage with you? How do you get them to not, frankly, think that's gross when they first try it? What's that like?
Yeah, really a few years ago that we passed a new law in Oklahoma that allowed us to have tap rooms. And so before that, we would have to brew beer and put it out in distribution, and you'd never have that face-to-face with a customer. Now we really focus on that taproom experience, and you kind of hit on it with the coffee. Like, you walk into a coffee shop, and if somebody's kind of new to that, it can be intimidating, right? Like, go to a real nice steakhouse in Denver or something and order a bottle of wine, and if you're not into wine, it's intimidating. It's kind of scary, right? So we try to have a very inclusive environment around our tap room, a welcoming environment, and education about the beer is like a real big key. Our staff is trained to kind of recognize when that person's sitting there like, what do I order? And we do flights, so you can get small pours of different beers so you can taste them and figure out what you like. The other thing, too, is those people that are used to drinking the Miller Lite or Coors Light or whatever, we're not trying to actually really market to them, right? So anybody that's grown up in Oklahoma knows a Bud Light guy, he's going to drink Bud Light from now till the day he dies, right? He's Chevy and Bud Light, and he's not switching. And so we're not actually going after those people. We're going after the people who are really open-minded and want to try different things. So we don't really try to brew too many beers that are like, this is for our Bud Light drinker, because they're not going to like it. It's not Bud Light, it doesn't taste like Bud Light, it's got too much flavor for them. And so they're never going to like that. But they might like this oatmeal stout or this imperial stout that tastes like chocolate and coffee. And it's a totally new, different experience. And that's what we're all about. Our business model is based around creating experiences for people. I used to sit around with my dad and drink different craft beer all the time, and he would always tell me that good craft beer brings good people together, and that's what we're trying to do with our tap room. Just get a bunch of good people together, create community around craft beer. Next thing you know, it takes off.
I think that's interesting. You really talk about, you have to know your own market segment in that case. That's funny what you mentioned. I think about that as someone who's not a huge craft beer drinker, I'll admit. Going into a cool brewery, especially in a place like Denver, and asking the bartender, what's the lightest thing you have on tap? And you're right, I'm probably not going to like it. But I think, much like experiencing, new different kinds of coffee. Coffee obviously has a tremendous amount of varietals, wine. And then with food, people having an open mind, coming in with that curiosity around the culinary experience and the taste, and turning that into an experience is actually what is making this really, like you said, the business.
And now a quick message from the sponsor of this episode of the Native Business Podcast, Ukukti Consulting and JoyHuntington.com. Ukukti Consulting is a statewide communications and community relations firm serving a variety of public and private sector clients. Joy Huntington, Ukukti's Consulting's president and principal consultant, has lived in rural Alaska for 15 years and has an in-depth understanding of socioeconomic, cultural, environmental, and political issues that face rural communities. Ukukti Consulting brings positive energy and promotes meaningful relationships for projects and companies across Alaska through effective communications, outreach, and facilitation efforts. Joy Huntington, who has received the Alaska Federation of Natives President's Award for Future Leadership and the Doyon Limited Future Leadership Award, has also been featured in Native Business Magazine as one of the 2019 Native Business Top 50 Entrepreneurs. She is very involved in bettering Native communities and recently launched the Joy Huntington brand of products and services to facilitate her work across Indian country. Her services include motivational speaking, youth engagement, career planning and coaching, journaling workshops, mentoring women in business, and entrepreneurial workshops. For more information on Ukukti Consulting, please visit uqaqti.com, uquectic.com. And for more information about Joy Huntington, please visit joyhuntington.com today. That's JOYHUNTINGTON.com today. If you'd like to sponsor the Native Business Podcast, please email us at sponsor@nativebusinessmag.com. And now we return you to the Native Business Podcast.
A question for all of you, and I think I want to start with Ben on this. I know Tocabe's been around for a while, and I've seen just in your all short time, just you've opened the second location. Where do you think this is going? I think that there is such a potential, and I know you mentioned that people compare you to kind of the Chipotle style, and I think that's the easiest way for people to understand it. You walk in, you order your bowl, or your taco, and kind of pick your toppings as you go. So that kind of is an easy way for people to come in and experience it if they don't really understand what the food items are to begin with. And then I think they leave really loving it. What's next for Tocabe, whether in Denver or elsewhere? Where do you see this going?
From day one, we had this goal of trying to make something that was a multi-unit, regional, if not national brand. And so that's what we're striving for. It's taken much longer than I expected, again, just because of the development of the brand, development of the concept, and really like building the legs for it. Because as kind of this whole panel is about, is the difficulties of being in the food world. For us and for native food producers, native restaurateurs, cooks, chefs, I see this as a huge step that we're going to continue to take. And not only that it's something that needs to happen, for multiple reasons. From our perspective as a company, what we would like to do is, if we can go into different different regions, I should say, the goal is to partner with people. And what we've done in the restaurant is that over the last 10, 11 years, we've been able to build a solid foundation economically to make sure that our company can make money. Because again, you have to make money to perpetuate the idea. So the goal is, can we go into different regions and then start to incorporate foods of that region? So again, what we're really trying to do is create a true American Indian eatery. Because people have asked me that before, how can you say American Indian eatery? It's true, we barely touch the surface in what we do. But the goal is that we're trying to make it happen. Not just us, many other native cooks, chefs, restaurateurs are trying to develop this. And the reason I say it's so important is that food is hip and food is cool. It's just like the coffee and the beer. It's becoming something cool. And if we don't begin to make the steps to creating these concepts, then someone else is going to do it. And we're already starting to see that in places. And you can conceal what it is by naming it something different, not calling it American Indian Eatery, but utilizing branding, utilizing imagery that is native focused. But again, and that's telling the story, and that's telling the story of our people and of our communities and of our food from an outside resource. So I believe the benefit of what we have in our company is that we care deeply about where we come from and where people that work for us come from and the communities come from. And so we want to be able to help tell the stories. We're not the storyteller. We want to help tell the stories and provide a space that people can do that through food. So for us, we're really beginning to branch out of Colorado, look to branch out of Colorado, and make it something that, not saying we'll be the 1,000-unit chain, not saying we'll be the 500-unit chain, because that's not necessarily what we want to be. We want to be strategically placed and focused on what our philosophy is and what our concept is, so we can stay true to what we're trying to create. Because again, we're in the beginning stages of native food in a restaurant concept. As we all know, food is a part of all of our lives every day, native and non-native alike, but specifically for native communities, it's so important for so many reasons. But from the restaurant standpoint, we're at the early phase, and I'm in full support of people developing and creating concepts that share our food, because what we really do and what's really important, sorry, super long-winded answer, is that what's important to me now is, I don't see myself as a chef, or even like a businessman. I don't really know what I am, but what I know that we can do now is that we can help provide and help build economy within our own communities and keep dollars with our own communities. So from partnering with different communities to purchase our wild rice, we buy, our olive oil, which is a non-indigenous ingredient, but that's out of a tribe out of California, our maple syrup. So again, we can partner and work together and make a cyclical nature of supporting one another and keeping dollars within our community, and continuing to support each other. So like that's what's so important to me as we grow, is we grow together and we grow and support the food producers. Because again, at a restaurant or a beer or a coffee, you know, what you get in a cup or what you get on a plate is just the final product, but there's so many hands that are deeply connected to why it got there and how it got there. So for me, that's something that's incredibly important to us, is that we need to support every step of the way, and that's something that, you know, in this context, in the business context, is that we can truly help to build and support economies, you know, on a smaller level, but the more we grow together and the stronger that we can become, and again, keeping the dollars within our own communities.
Yeah, the Tocabe ecosystem. Bill?
Our focus in our growth is in the coffee shop type of businesses. We today supply 400 coffee shops around the country, and our vision is to partner with a number of native nations and help them get in the coffee business. There's a wide opportunity, and that's where I think I see our future.
Yeah, craft beer is a little bit difficult on that. So some of you recently in the news might have seen where Dogfish Head, one of the most famous craft breweries, has just merged with Sam Adams, who was Boston Beer Company, which is one of the very first craft breweries. And that was a $300 million merger. And that was actually done out of survival for them, because they...
yeah, folks, just for context, that $300 million was insanely low compared to other beer acquisitions in the past.
That's right.
So that just shows you what the market looks like.
And Sam Calagione, the owner of Dogfish Head, one of the reasons that he wanted to do that was to combat this idea that you kind of hinted at a little while ago, that these big beer companies, whether it's AB InBev, Miller Coors, they're buying up these local small craft breweries and turning them really not even into craft beer anymore. And so a lot of people are seeing the craft beer numbers decline, and a lot of that's because some of the most well-known craft breweries are no longer considered craft beer anymore. And so the idea, what happened was, for Sam Adams, Sierra Nevada, Dogfish Head, this idea of expanding all over the country, and kind of like what he wants to do, is nearly impossible now for craft beer, because the consumer wants to drink local. So if Sierra Nevada was to build a new brewery in Oklahoma City, well, people in Oklahoma City don't want to drink beer from California. They want to drink a local beer. They want to support local. And in our case, a lot of people want to support native. So we don't really have plans of expanding nationwide and then trying to fit into one of those big buyouts or mergers. You know, our deal is to focus, be deep and narrow, focus locally, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and then we're in talks now with a couple of the bigger tribes here about possibly putting a location in one of their bigger casinos. That's our way of expanding, creating more of those tap rooms, creating more experiences for people to come in, not necessarily shipping beer all over the country. So being local, staying local, and then of course, there's a lot of interest from tribes who own and operate, whether it's distribution channels or gaming properties around the country, who have contacted us about, possibly expanding in that route, But our goal is not to really do that. Our goal is to stay local, be Oklahoma's brewery, be a representative of my Muscogee people, and just kind of keep it small.
I appreciate your comments on that. I know we touched on this on a few of the panels yesterday, that growth can look different for different companies. And while it may seem that, well, Jake, obviously, of course you want to turn into this massive operation and be bought by Miller Coors, but that actually isn't your goal, and that's okay, and that your goals as a business owner can be different than somebody else's. Ben, a question, I know you mentioned possibly expanding outside of Colorado, which I think is hugely exciting. Any teasers on where that might be? Have you guys thought about that yet?
So it's kind of a bummer, but we were very close to signing a lease actually here in Tulsa back in January that fell through. That was actually our second lease that we had been working on in Tulsa. So we're kind of still just looking, Oklahoma is always a great first step for us, just from, the community, the network we already have here, the people that already understand and relatable to what we do and the food that we do. So again, that kind of goes to like what we're really working on is that we have to kind of repeat it is just stay very strategic in how we go, because we don't ever want to just be a like a strip center, middle of the center. We have to remain and be unique in what we do, and make sure that when we actively select our locations, that there's a reason for it, that it fits into the mold of what we're trying to create. So that's really complex when you start thinking about out of state, because you have to have a network of people or a region or an area that you know or understand, so you can find the right place. So to give you an answer, no, we don't really have a spot yet, but I think in the next few months we'll have some really exciting stuff happening. So.
Well, I'm sure Native Business Magazine will want to hear all about it, and I hope that for those of you that haven't had a chance to experience it, if you do find yourself in Denver, please go check it out. Their food is awesome. I guess kind of in our remaining 10 minutes, what I'd like for each of you to share with us, tell us a little bit more, tell us where we can find you, whether, the physical location, online, any social media you'd like to plug. And then I want to know what your favorite thing is that you make. And I know you, Bill, you already told us one, so you can tell us another one. What your favorite item is on the menu, what your favorite beer is, and then kind of tell us why, because I'm sure there's a story behind all this. So once again, we'll kick it over to Bill. So Bill, tell us your website, where you're located, and what your favorite coffee is.
You can reach us at nativeamericancoffee.com. Also, we own coffee.org, which is more of a break room supply website. We're strictly an online business, and we have a wholesale program for Native nations around the country. That's it.
Your favorite one? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I like the Dancing Rabbit, but I also like the Buffalo Blend. It's a darker roast, and I love being a small batch roaster, and I like roasting myself some out there. We roast to order, so if you order coffee today, we'll roast it tomorrow and then cools and ships the following morning.
Yeah, Jake, where can we find you? I know you guys have been in business since last December.
Yeah. So we launched in December in this co-op brewery that we share space with in Oklahoma City on the west side over on Meridian between 10th and Reno. We're really close to signing a lease on a building in downtown Oklahoma City to where we build our own tap room. Currently, we're all over the state. Locally here in Tulsa, we're trying to move into Tulsa with for instance, River Spirit Casino has like 12 of our beers on tap. Most of the tribes casinos have us in their facility, and then all the craft beer centric places will have Tapworks and Okanor in Oklahoma City. Those types of places. There's a couple Chili's locations that have our beer in there. Favorite beers, so they're all my kids, right? So I will say probably, so I'm a hophead. I'm big into IPAs. I love IPAs. Next week, we're debuting our new hazy New England IPA called Fancy Dance. And then probably my other favorite is Sovereign Nation, which is an imperial stout. We've made small batches of it, served in the tap room. We'll actually have it up here this Sunday at Hop Jam, the big beer festival up here. That's something that a lot of people have tasted at times, even going back to when I was a home brewer and we'd be at festivals. So a lot of people are excited about that. And then, of course, I have to say a chocolate hazelnut milk stout that my fiance over here, Bobby, she brewed it herself, the first and only time she ever homebrewed shortly after we met, and we entered our beers into a big competition, and she outscored me with, with that beer, so that's definitely one of my favorites.
Sometimes it just takes a woman's touch.
That's right. You got
yourself a keeper after that. Yeah.
And Jake, so all of your beers you're only on tap. There's no bottle distribution.
So the government shutdown really hurt us with packaging. For those of you that don't know, your labels have to be approved by the federal government, and then once they're approved, that's a 6-week process of actually getting the cans in and the labels put on and having them delivered to your brewery. And then once the government did reopen, they were a good 45 to 60 days backlogged. So we just rolled out our first 2 cans a raspberry orange wheat beer, and our golden ale. The Fancy Dance will be in cans, and then the rest of our core lineup over the next 2 months will be out in cans. So if you look us up on skydancebrewing.com, all the social media, Facebook, Instagram, you'll see the packaging. We're really proud of the packaging. We went with a local guy named John Knight who runs Mint Apparel out of Oklahoma City. This was his first packaging design of any type, and he knocked it out of the park. So,
well, that's very exciting. Congratulations, and keep an eye out in stores for that. Ben, what's your favorite item on the menu? I'm sure there's many. If you had to pick one.
So by far my favorite is our bison ribs. So to try and make you hungry, I guess, before lunch is our evolution of our recipes have come a long way. But now, in the last several years, we make our own bison stock in-house. So we do a 24 to 36 hour dry cure. So we have an in-house spice rub. We butcher everything in-house. I guess I'll back up and say we make everything in-house except for two things. And one of those is the hot sauce that's on the table if people want hot sauce. But yeah, we do everything in-house. So we get the ribs in, we butcher the ribs, we dry rub, and then we let them cure, just dry cure in the refrigerator from 24 to 36 hours. Then after that, we sear on the grill, and then we slow braise in house-made bison stock. So it's great because you have the flavor of the actual meat, but then it's incorporated and it slowly reduces with the bison stock. So you're really just imparting tons of flavor right back into the meat because bison is a very lean meat, and so in order to keep flavor, you just have to make sure you do it slow and incorporate kind of the flavor and the juiciness back into it. But then once it's done and you order it, we glaze it with a house-made blueberry or blackberry barbecue sauce. Those are our kind of two go-tos. We've also done choke cherry, raspberry, strawberry, you name it. Blueberry and blackberry are our most popular. Then we glaze it, sear it on the grill, and then cut it and serve it. It is my favorite by far. If I have to pick one.
Yeah, and I've seen them. They're huge.
Yeah, they're huge. Yeah.
Well, I think, now we're all hungry. My stomach was making some noises just now. That's delicious sounding. I guess, and tell us where we can find you.
Well, location's obviously in Denver, but we have the normal social media, Instagram, Facebook, all that kind of stuff, which I'm terrible at, but we have cool stuff posted periodically. We'll get better at it. And then hopefully you'll see us out there somewhere in the near future with other shops. I do want to say this real quick is that, to kind of push native food, not just what we do, but, the native food movement is growing rapidly again, and it's huge. And so I tell people all the time to actively look into the foods that you have. Again, we have to eat every day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you have to we all grab a muffin here or there, we eat a burger here and there, but find your food producers, find your native food producers, try and incorporate that into your life. We try and do something that's eat with tradition. So if you can at least do something once a week, try and create that meal even at home, bring the family element back into it, some of those ingredients. So from the restaurant, support, the coffee, the craft beer, the restaurateurs, but also really support your food at home. And I just think it's incredibly important to bring that in and start making actively better decisions in the food that we eat on a day-to-day basis. Absolutely, yeah. Food, I think, can be more than just, like you said, something it's more than sustenance. At least it is for me. Take a lot of pride in cooking and enjoying it and really turning it into an experience. I guess to take us back and to kind of end on a business note in the remaining few minutes, if you had one piece of advice for folks wanting to go into the food and beverage business, what would that be? And we'll start with Bill.
I think that the main thing is just the focus of passion of what you do. For us to have survived in the coffee business, we had to really have a passion, and it took a lot of money, and it was a lot of ups and downs, and it still is ups and downs. But I think the passion is the most important thing you must have.
Yeah, I'm kind of on this big kick of you're going to die. So you may not have tomorrow, right? So my whole deal started with just me and my dad had this dream, and before we could start the business, he was in a nursing home and then passed away. So you put things off, and you think it's really not just food or beer or any business. It's any business at all, right? You've got to take action and make it happen. And I think having run casinos and had a focus on hiring and developing some of our Native American people I've found that in our communities a lot of times that we seem to have this idea of like, oh, well, we can't do that. Like that's for other people or whatever. And so my thing is you don't have a bunch of time, and entrepreneurship is really my religion, you know. And I think the only way to do it is just to do it, make it happen, take action.
And then for me, if you want me to be 100% honest, I would tell people from a restaurant standpoint, from food, is it sucks. It is an amazing experience, but the reason I say that is because of the difficulty, the complexity of it, but also when you put, especially with what we do, you put your heart and your soul into something and what you believe in, especially when you come from, you know, the community and you're trying to share something, you're trying to share food, experience, identity, and open up a space like that, and then, you know, you have a struggle to survive, to get people to come in and want to be willing to support that and put their money into it. So the ups and downs are really tough. But along with what Bill said, you know, the passion has to override that. The passion has to drive that. The days that you go home and you're embarrassed because no one came in and you're upset, you have to continue with the passion to know that like what you're trying to create can be something special. And that's what I say is more than anything, we're an idea and we're just trying to make an idea work. And if we can just continue to strive every day to perpetuate what we're trying to create through that idea, then we're going to have the passion. We're going to get past those huge hurdles. So if you're going to go into food, know that it's tough. Know that it's rough. Know, especially in this day and age of Yelp and all these online reviews, that people may say negative things, but you believe in what you do, and you're going to have a group of people that truly support what your cause and what your food is, and just like know at the end of the day that what you're doing is good. Because if it does fail and it doesn't continue, just know that what you put into it was meaningful, and especially for what we do, it represents your people and your communities well, because if people that come after you and see all the work that we've all done, just like we did from the people before us, we're going to be successful, and we're going to create pretty amazing things as communities.
Well, sage advice, and that was a food joke for any of you. From Ben Jacobs of Tocabe, Jake Keys, Skydance Brewing, and Mr. Bill McClure from Native American Coffee. Thank you very much for this very delicious and fun discussion, and I encourage you all to check their businesses out. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.